Top five most disappointing books of all time for me, part one. Starting off with The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I contemplated putting The Final Empire in place of The Well of Ascension. The Final Empire, of course, did disappoint me, but I rate that book not highly, but I actually really liked that book. And one thing that's always been a criticism of what The Well of Ascension for me is that it didn't it regressed from the first book, but it fell a lot more flat. It stood still a lot, and the charisma was gone. That was why the Well of Ascension was a disappointment. But you got to couple that with the fact that Mistborn Era 1 is seen by many as GOAT level fantasy. And I think that's essentially what its downfall is as a series. It doesn't quite live up to its love that it has within the fantasy community. The Well of Ascension, again, like here's the thing with Sanderson. I actually really like his prose. I love his writing. I When I found myself going back to like reading the next books when I was reading the series, when I was reading the trilogy, I really liked settling into his world, his prose, his explanation, his philosophical and theological musings. I really, really enjoyed it. I really actually really like Sanderson's writing. I like that he chose that he's deliberate with how he sort of lays out his prose. I appreciate that. And to be honest, he's always books that I've read three so far, move at a very brisk pace as well. They're all, there's sections of the book where it's a crazy page turner, but I guess just the choice of the siege, I should say, that takes place in this book really grinds everything to a halt. And it really sort of drains this book. And that's the thing as well. It didn't just grind it to a stop, it drained from it too, which you don't really want to do, especially because there was a lot of sort of political maneuverings and angst, and there was a lot of problems during the siege. But is what it is. This is definitely is one of the most disappointing ones because it's after this that I knew that the Mistborn series really was overhyped. Like if the Final Empire was the worst book, and even that was like a 4 star for me. If that was the worst book in the series and it got better and better, that's one thing. Then you sort of evaluate everything once the trilogy's done. But the Final Empire was the height of Mistborn Era 1 trilogy. And that's a problem. Because unlike with a series like Red Rising, for example, that first book, which is a 4.5 star read, brilliant series, is the worst it gets. And then the other 2 books are just out of this world, like just diabolically sick and diabolically crazy. And unfortunately, we don't get that with Miss One Era 1. It is what it is. Notice by Heather Lewis. This is an auto fiction, literary fiction book that was released after the death of the author. I've talked about this on my channel before, and I literally just read a few weeks ago, I read Tampa by Elisa Nuttin, and I'm starting to realize that the sexually grotesque horror subgenre isn't for me. I got into this mainly because of the booktuber Criminally, and I was very excited to read this. I was like, oh god, this is gonna be crazy because he described it as the most disturbing book he's ever read. There's a lot of just there's a lot of sexual content in here, of course, but the psychology of the protagonist, who I think actually reflects the author herself when she was alive, just doesn't make for a good story. And like I said in my previous video, I and it sounds crass and it sounds bad, but I can see why this got rejected by so many editors and publishers and whatnot while the author was still alive, because it's not good writing at all. There is this constant melancholy and sharpness in Lewis's prose that can work when crazy situations call for it. But as the sort of default way of constructing a book, it doesn't work, and it has the opposite effect that it should have. So I was definitely disappointed in this. I was looking forward to it, especially because it was out of print, then became back in print because of Criminoli and those who like me subscribe to his channel, but not for me. The Atlas Paradox by Olivie Blake is the second book in the Atlas trilogy, and it's definitely the most disappointing one. It's not the worst one, it's the second worst one, but it's the most disappointing because I think by now I should have a video out, which is my top 5 fantasy books of all time. The first book in this trilogy, the Atlas 6, is on that list because that was the first time I got caught up in a TikTok hype and it was justified. And this was the follow up. This was the much anticipated follow up. And for the first 100 pages or so, when the characters are doing this sort of like simulation, it felt like a continuation of everything that made the Atlas 6 great for me, which is the character conflicts and their dynamics, which is sick. The rest of this book, though, it literally starts off a high and drops off. It starts off high, drops off a cliff, stays there, which is not good. And I was really bitter at the end of this because I expected so much and I loved the Atlas 6 so much. But again, I don't know what it is. Olivie Blake just missed the mark badly with this. And even to this day, I'm still not sure what happened. Like, I'm not sure if the Atlas 6 was supposed to just be one book and then it got stretched into a series because the Atlas 6 was released independently and it got picked up because it was just that good and the hype was, she got a lot of hype online. But the rest of the series, it's just something just felt so off, and yeah, it really left me with a bad taste in my mouth. Didn't like it. Very disappointed in it, which is a shame. The Children of Men by P.D. James is it is as mid as a post-apocalyptic book you can get. What really pisses me off about this book is that James is a very good writer, and I can tell by her prose that she is, you know, she's a writer. Like, she's really good. And the start of this book, I thought was literally a 9 out of 10. The way she was building up the world and sort of illustrating through the protagonist the fallout of humans being infertile and what's happened with, different generations of people. Beautiful, brilliantly done. And instead of ramping that up as we go through the acts, it kind of just stays in this very casual tone. And I think the protagonist and how he is and what he does for a living doesn't help because what's his name? Is it Theo? I think it's Theo. Yeah, Theo. He's an Oxford historian and he's living a very middle class life. He's lived a very upper middle class life. And because we're in his sort of head and he's doing journal entries and everything, it seems to be, instead of ramping up as the book goes on, it kind of sort of drags into, the regrets, and we're seeing the actions of a very privileged, even during an apocalypse, the very privilege of the privilege of a privileged guy. Like, we're seeing his life as a privileged middle class Oxford well esteemed historian. And the side characters don't add a lot to this. The group that we meet, the group kind of come off as a bit of a joke. I don't know if James was hoping to like subvert expectations, but yeah. You know what it is with this book? For post-apocalyptic dystopian about humans being infertile and being under an oppressive regime. It seems very mild, very, there's still manners, and it's very orderly. It's like, British people are still queuing in an orderly fashion. That's what it comes up as across to me. And during a post-apocalyptic book, that seems to be the worst thing that could happen. That your world that you've imagined and that you're portraying and the message you're trying to get across seem orderly in a world that has gone to absolute crap and is going to die. So yeah, very disappointed in this one. It's just mid. That's what it is. It's mid. It's neutral. It's orderly and polite. And having a polite post-apocalyptic book, there's just I don't know what to do with that. To round off this list, Death at Intervals by Jose Saramago. This disappointed me because last year I read Blindness by the same author, and that is one of the best books I've ever read in my life by far. It is the gold standard of post-apocalyptic books, unlike The Children of Men. Blindness compared to Children of Men is just night and day. There's just P.D. James is so far behind that book, so far behind Saramago. And in this book, death, humans have conquered death, essentially. They think they have. No one dies at the start of the year. And for several months, we see the fallout through not characters per se, but we see it through like the eyes of prime minister and philosophers and ordinary people. But it's not like we're following any one character. Halfway through the book is when it starts to get interesting because we actually start to follow the Grim Reaper, like Death herself, as she resumes her duties, but kind of changes the way she does things. And towards the end of the book, it becomes a bit of a romance for a particular reason that I won't get into. Jose Saramago was, I think he's quite avant-garde regarding his writing style, and he was like that on purpose. There are no speech marks. We don't know any characters' names. We just they're referred to by their profession, which was the same in Blindness as well. And obviously, Jose Saramago has his signature stream of conscious writing style that worked brilliantly in Blindness because Blindness was a whole reading experience, mainly because of the topic, Jose Saramago's execution, but also because of his stream of consciousness writing style, and the prose were just fantastic. But it doesn't work with this book. That's the thing. And maybe because this isn't a book about blindness, that there's no sort of visual reading experience, elevated visual reading experience. It's just you're kind of just following along, and this book really fell flat. It is a short book, it's a short read. This is called Death with Interruptions, but the UK edition is Death at Intervals for whatever reason. Very disappointed in this. I was expecting so much more, but it gets like that. Thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and don't forget to like and subscribe.